So many people will successfully lose weight and then they'll be at their weight with all of these health conditions that they have no concept, because they thought once I lose the weight, I'll be fine. And so now it's a mentality of, oh no, I'm fine now. And then now this weird thing is happening to my body that seems completely unrelated to everything that I've done in the past because I fixed my weight problem. And this is where weight is not, it is part of the problem, but it's how you return that body to normal is what we're looking for.
Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins, epigenetic human performance coach. This is where we discuss all things lifestyle, environment, food, exercise, work, mind, and social interaction as they pertain to epigenetic expression in a way that's relatable to everyone. So if you're ready to start viewing you as an individual, take control of your life and health, and get results, buckle up, here we go. Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins. This is where we talk about everything lifestyle and environment and how it relates to our genetic expression. And today is going to be jam-packed, full of fantastic information, because I have returning from episodes 1 and 2, the amazing Dr. Cam McDonald. And this episode, you guys, is going to make you want to go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2. And if you've already listened, you're going to want to go back and listen again. But this episode is going to be chock full of so much awesome information that I think so many of you will relate to. And we're going to jump in. But the background on Cam: he is a leader, educator, scientist, motivator, and father. He is a CEO of Precision Health Alliance and VP of Shea Wellness. And this is the AI-based platform that I use with my coaching. And so when you hear us talking about things like the Diplomat, the Activator, that is the PH360 or Shea app that I use. And that's what we will be referring to that we're talking about today. And most people in the United States are unaware of this platform, which is one of the reasons I decided to do this podcast, because people need to realize how individual we actually are and how important it is that we are doing the things, mind, body, soul, work-wise, everything that we need as an individual, and not the generic things that we hear all the time. Cam is an exercise physiologist, a dietitian, PhD scholar in nutrition and exercise physiology, and preventing chronic disease. So that's Cam's background. He is a fellow of the Australasian Society of Lifestyle Medicine, experienced clinician, and is an international leader in the application of personalized health and epigenetics. His focus is to educate individuals on how the whole environment impacts physical and mental health and disease. So buckle up, people, because this is going to be a great one. If you want to hear more of how Cam and I began interacting, Cam is my mentor. He was my coach. He introduced me to this amazing world of the Shea app and PH360. And that's back in episodes 1 and 2. You can get the full effect of that on there, the full discussion. But we're going to touch on several different topics. Cam, I've heard Cam speak on podcasts and in trainings that we've had, and he is just such a wealth of information. He loves to research. He is a crusader. He's data driven. He has all the info and how to use it, how to put it into action, which is, of course, what I love. And I had talked to him and said, there's so many different topics that I want to touch on. And he said, let's do it. So like I said, buckle up, because there's going to be so many things we're going to touch on today. Things starting from, are you getting too much protein? Because we always are hearing, you're not getting enough, you're not getting enough. Are you getting too much? Stubborn weight gain that you can't seem to lose. And people never think about the flip side of the people that have trouble gaining weight and the health issues that may cause for that group of people. Sleep. How crucial sleep is, and the timing. And if you are a shift worker or a first responder, pay attention there. What else, Cam?
Let's just see how it rolls.
Let's see how it rolls.
Yep, because everybody's looking for the magic pill. And what do we know about the magic pill? It doesn't effing exist.
No, it does exist. The magic pill will be announced in this podcast today.
Because it's all stemming from you, people.
Yeah.
You. That's your magic pill is yourself. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to take off my glasses, relax into this, because it's going to be a good one. Let's start with the protein. I hear a lot of people that I see, and there's all more protein, but that is not the way for every single health type, is it?
No, it's not. And it's important to talk about protein as a whole, first and foremost. Protein is absolutely essential to human health. That's very important. Protein's found in plants and animal foods. And generally, when we are looking at protein as a weight loss strategy, the way that there was a whole lot of research that looked at if you eat more protein, it makes you eat less calories and feel more full. It's very satiating. So there's a real benefit in that, particularly when every bit of focus that we have on weight loss is actually all I need to do for this person is to get their weight off. When that's the only focus, then anything that reduces their intake is going to be a positive thing. When what we know is that it's not just about the weight that you lose, it's about how you lose the weight. And the other nutrients that are going into your body, the other environmental factors that are playing a role in that as well. So the reason that it's purported or it's out there in the literature to say, hey, high protein diets are really good because it reduces your overall intake, because you feel more satisfied, you're more likely to eat less and feel good from a satisfaction point of view, which then definitely reduces people's food consumption. The second thing as well is that when you get enough protein, it holds your muscle mass on. So if you don't have any protein, it's very difficult to hold muscle mass. In fact, you'll start wasting muscle mass. So the reason why I want to share that with you is because there are some absolute, very important areas of science that say, hey, if you eat protein, it has a positive effect on X, Y, Z. A moderate amount of protein, very important for your immune system and your insulin sensitivity and your regulation and things like that. However, whenever we talk about all of these things, it is always about, but it depends on the person. Because there are some individuals that need, the way that they oxidize and metabolize, they actually need a little bit more protein because that's what their body requires. Just the way that they use it, they need more of it. They waste more protein. Some individuals actually lose protein a lot faster as for protein out of their body. From muscle tissue and various things like that, they can lose muscle tissue more easily. Other individuals are so good at holding muscle tissue and holding fat tissue. Their requirements are not as great. Now, generally, when we're looking at, because we're obviously using the world's most advanced precision health tool that uses AI and machine learning to do its thing. And we know that there is an amount of protein that you need for a normal, healthy individual in order to maintain good function. However, there are times when low protein diets are indicated. And this is really important because normally we think, oh, I've got weight on. And this is where I'm getting to the point, probably where you wanted to ask is, I need to lose weight. So I'm just going to increase my protein because that's what everybody does. Everybody goes, yeah, I'm just going to add more protein. I'm even going to do the carnivore diet because more protein is great. You're holding your muscle tissue. Everything's going to be fine if that's the case. That's essentially the attitude that we have. And so there are some problems with high protein intake. If your protein intake is too high, it runs the risk of damaging your kidneys. It runs the risk of increasing your risk of gout. It can dysregulate your insulin sensitivity, which is the way that you manage blood sugar levels. It can, particularly animal proteins, can significantly increase your cancer risk. Now, but when we think about, and a lot of it's related to metabolic syndrome. So if we see, and even hypertension is another consideration with that as well. So if we're looking at a population of people that have a high risk of gout, a high risk of diabetes, a high risk of bowel cancer, and a higher issue generally with insulin signaling in their body, if that are all of their predispositions, and we can now measure and predict that, which is essentially what we do. And this is where anyone with an influence from their endodermic tissues, guardians, some connectors, some diplomats, they will be more likely, if we were to put 100 people in a room, those are the individuals that are more likely to have those conditions, because that's the way their body goes out of balance. And so when we're doing an assessment, and this is where the truly world-leading assessment that happens in SHEA, what happens is it starts compiling risk factors for this individual. It's, okay, cool. This is a person that if they're out of balance, these are their risk factors for gout and for liver and for insulin issues and for various things like that, metabolic syndrome. Great, we know that. And we're seeing that their waist circumference is very high. And we're seeing that their lips are cracking and their skin is flaking and they've got dandruff and they have very poor nail bed quality, and they're also not sleeping very well, and they're also not eating a whole lot of decent foods, and their exercise is very low. Now, all of a sudden, that person with risk factors for all of these conditions has then piled on all of these factors for, there is a very good chance that the pathways in your body are going to be under a whole lot of pressure. And so what do we have to do for that person? We have to alleviate pressure. And normally we only give a low protein diet when it's gone really bad, when the kidneys are failing, those types of things. But this is what AI and predictive medicine can do. It can say, we know this person is probably going to go that direction right now. And it's not as if at one point the proteins start doing damage because you can now diagnose it. For maybe 2 years, there was some damage that was occurring, and now we have a frank condition. And so what we're doing is, hey, we're going to predict that 2 years ahead of time. We're going to pull the protein levels down, and then we're going to mitigate a lot of the risk that protein may have in this body specifically. And so this is where, if you're a guardian and you've done the profile, or a diplomat, you're holding a fair bit of extra weight, there's a lot of stress in your system, there's a whole lot of stress in your lifestyle factors, it's going to say, hey, we can see where this is going and we know what your body does with this. We're going to start recommending a lower protein intake for a little while. And this is really
the key, right? It's
exactly
for a short period of time to get the body into balance.
Yeah, precisely. And this is where low protein is not designed forever, because you're not meant to have the disease forever. You're meant to have a disease process. Once we identify it, we want to stop it. And so if that disease process stops, then this is where your body's going to be metabolizing more normally as well. So this is where generally, if people followed the protocol very closely, they'll see that for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, they'll have a very low protein intake, where all of their protein is essentially coming from plant matter. And there is a lot of protein in plant matter. You just have to eat a lot more plants to get the same amount of protein. But that body as well, that's under all of those risk factors, that it's bringing down the protein. It's going to insulin sensitize them. It's going to support their bowel health. It's going to improve their kidney function. It's going to decrease the risk of uric acid issues and gout. And so all of a sudden now we've given the pathways that are normally under pressure for this person, we've given them a break. And for 6 weeks, there's a rest and recovery that occurs in those tissues and in those pathways. And then you'll often see, because this is what we see in the research as well, you'll see a significant reduction in mass, in weight generally, and you'll see a significant reduction, particularly around waist and rib. And this is what I've seen clinically over the last 10 years of doing this very consistently, following the outputs of the profile and understanding that different people need a certain amount of protein. And then once that change occurs, exercise, normally there's more motivation and energy in the body as far as they feel more motivated. They then start moving, which is a great thing. They're moving more. And now, of course, they're going to require more protein. But we're indicating, hey, this person's now exercising more. Their waist circumference has reduced 8 centimeters. We're seeing more energy through the day. Sleep has normalized. So now, of course, the risk factors are lower. And now we want to add that back in. We want to add the protein back in to maintain good function of the muscle, because the risk of it doing damage is now lower. But this is something that normal clinicians are generally not thinking about, because firstly, there's an enormous amount of literature to say weight loss equals high protein. But what they miss is the nuance of there is a disease process that's going on, and for this individual, and for a short period of time, we're going to do this. And then for another period of time, we're going to do that. Whereas the literature normally says, let's follow high protein diets for 2 years and see what happens. And this is where individuals change with the season. We change with our weight. We change with the amount of stress that we're under socially. all of these factors are then influencing the risk factors that are compiling and changing the way that we receive that protein. So the long and short of it is, I have been working in this space for the last 10 years. I would have seen well over 1,000 just by myself, individuals that were relevant to this kind of conversation that we're talking about right now. And I'd tried I even did research in Denmark looking at the more protein that you have as you age, the better it is. We're talking about leucine consumption in the diet. So I came back from that to be then presented with precision health cases with virtually no protein in them, or no animal protein. And I was shocked. I was stunned, and I was doubting it. And what I found is that for the right person, for the right amount of time, lowering the protein dramatically changes their health. And it's not just a matter of, they lose a bit of weight, but we see significant improvements in liver markers, significant improvements in metabolic markers, insulin. And even if they have some treats after the 4 to 5 weeks of doing that low protein, their body just responds differently to those treats, better to those treats, because their organs now are functioning after a big recovery phase that they've just had. So it actually creates a reset of their organ health, rather than they're just losing weight and their organs are staying the same amount of health. And so this is obviously, weight loss is supportive for organ health generally in obesity, but I've seen clinically a significant uplift in the benefits that come from this lower protein intake.
And I have too. And because I get the majority of people I get are going to be the guardians and the diplomats that have the harder time. They're more prone to the metabolic syndrome. And we're seeing all of this expressing, and they get their profile. They're like, where did my protein go? And I try to stress it. This is for a very short period of time. And when we look at the labs, like you said, a lot of the times the kidney markers are crazy. The liver markers are crazy. And the difference we see over that next couple of months is phenomenal, of the difference that makes. And again, it's not for a long period of time, but a lot of them that are coming to me are on keto, or a lot of carnivore. And it's not just the protein there, but how about the saturated fat? Because that's all it is. They're getting, I have one woman putting a stick of butter in a cup of coffee every morning. You can't make that up, and wonders why she feels like shit. Right? And I said, but she said, but it's been working for me. Okay, but you're here, so it's not working.
And so many people will successfully lose weight, and then they're at their weight with all of these health conditions that they have no concept, because they thought, once I lose the weight, I'll be fine. And so now it's a mentality of, oh no, I'm fine now. And then now this weird thing is happening to my body that seems completely unrelated to everything that I've done in the past, because I fixed my weight problem. And this is where weight is not, it is part of the problem, but it's how you return that body to normal is what we're looking for. And that it doesn't necessarily return to normal just because it's low weight.
Exactly. That's why I said, draw the labs. We have to look and see what's happening within the body, not just on the outside. And again, and doing DNA and stuff, I know that there's actually quite a few people that don't tend to process saturated fats really well. Plus, if you're an ApoE4, increased risk for Alzheimer's like I have, saturated fat, no bueno. We really want to avoid that. But like I said, keto or the carnivore is a big topic, and it's all, again, these are generic recommendations, people. When you hear someone say that this is good for every single body, other than sugar, because we know sugar is like the big thing. But other than that, I say, really, there's nothing that is exactly right for every single body. So with the saturated fat, what I've seen with especially the more endomorphic type bodies, like the guardians, some of the diplomats, some of the connectors, when they're eating this high amount of protein and this especially high amounts of saturated fats, all of a sudden, and it was all to lower blood sugar, right? Because that's the first thing a doctor tells them when they start having, when they have fatty liver, they have insulin resistance, pre-diabetes. And the first thing the doctor says is cut all the carbs, go keto, go carnivore. And again, they'll get a little bit of that weight loss because most of them weren't eating well to begin with. But then they start to become insulin resistant or start having glucose issues.
Yes.
And they're like, I'm not eating any carbs. Can you touch on that? Because I found this, I had a client that I actually went to Cam about this, and I said, what the hell is happening? She's eating super, like hardly any carbs, eating fat bombs constantly. What is happening here? And I just think this is fascinating
explanation.
Yeah. So really important thing, first and foremost, is that one of the reasons that protein improves blood sugar control initially is because protein comes in and stimulates insulin production. It doesn't necessarily make the cell more sensitive. It doesn't make the body better at soaking up glucose, which is ultimately the goal that we have. So the best way to solve blood sugar problems is to make the muscles so active that they just whip sugar out of the blood because they need it and they don't even need insulin. The only reason we need insulin is because we're not exercising enough. Of course, we need insulin and we express it overnight to help recover us. But throughout the day, it would be great if we were moving so much that we didn't need insulin to put our blood sugar levels away. So that we want a really quick transfer of sugar into the cell, whether it be muscle or the brain. That's the goal of diabetes management, is to make our muscles and brain so active and so accessible. Now, what we know is that when you eat lots of protein, you increase the amount of insulin that's produced. Okay. Now, it doesn't make the cell better at soaking up the glucose. It just says, hey, pancreas, it just gets out a whip and says, make more insulin. And so insulin goes out and it then grabs hold of the sugar and it packs the sugar away into the muscles. But our goal is to have less insulin required for that process. Okay. So that's our goal, is to have less insulin required, and exercise reduces the amount of insulin required, etc. So the first and foremost is that guardians, or those bodies with an endodermic influence that generally hold more weight, they've got a bigger bone structure, we see more issues with metabolic syndrome in them generally. If we look at their daily insulin release, generally these individuals are producing more insulin at any given time of the day than somebody who's leaner. And that's because their body, just the way that it's set up, is set up with their autonomic nervous system and their parasympathetic sympathetic balance, is that they just produce more insulin. They're in a more parasympathetic state more of the time. They're more calm, they're more steady, and their pancreas produces more insulin. This is just part of their makeup. And so if that's the case, they've got enough insulin floating around their body. And so putting more protein in just creates more insulin. Insulin is a growth factor. So insulin is helping you grow, which is exactly why we do it, to hold muscle on. But if we've got a body that's already too big, and then we're adding more and more protein, we're just adding more growth factor into the mix. That's number one. Number two is when we have a protein being ingested, it goes to the liver and also produces a little bit more glucose in the liver as well. Okay. It's producing more insulin, which is helping us grow. It's also helping us pack some sugar away. And I'm just setting some things up here. It's also going and creating some glucose at the liver. So there's glucose running through our bloodstream. But the problem with why blood sugar problems are happening for these individuals is because they're not fixing the issue to start with. And the issue to start with is a whole lot of stress, inflammation, and the wrong type of environment for their body. And what that does, that creates a lot more cortisol, creates insulin resistance. We also have, if there's inflammation in the bowel, if there's lots of oxidation that's coming through from the digestive tract because it's trying to process all of these proteins that are fermenting, that can create an inflammatory response as well. If you've got inflammation, it makes it a lot harder for blood sugar to get into the muscles. And so we've got this body that already has enough insulin. It's now producing more insulin, which is becoming a growth factor, but then maybe they're not sleeping right. There's a poor digestive issue going on that's creating inflammation. There's also maybe some inflammation in their large intestine as well. This is what we're seeing from higher meat sources in individuals like this. So if we've got a life that's stressful, we've got family life that's really busy, all of these stresses increase the cortisol, increase insulin resistance in this body. And so we have insulin resistance. We then have, from all of the stress, which is completely unrelated to the protein, is in some ways adding to that inflammation in some ways. And then we have the extra insulin production as well. So all of these things coming together, you will end up with a body that is very confused. It's I'm insulin resistant already. I can't pack this sugar away. I've got protein just pumping more and more insulin out into the body. Insulin is a growth factor. And so what you will see over time is you'll see weight loss because you'll see a calorie deficit, and then you'll see a plateau as the body just tries to shut down and slow down. And we also see with stress and inflammation in these individuals, we see lower thyroid function. The way that their body responds to stress is to conserve energy. So when we have a more parasympathetic body, which we do in the Guardians, some of the diplomats, some of the connectors, when they get stressed, their body tries to conserve energy. And this is the way that it protects their family, because they're very family oriented, and their biology is saying, I've got to commit all of my energy to my family. I'm under stress, which means my family's under stress. I need to conserve energy. And we see the whole system shut down. We see the thyroid levels drop. So thyroid activity reduces. We see more growth, we see more tiredness, more fatigue. And what's really interesting is that if you take protein away from these bodies and just dump a whole lot of vegetables into them, it's now they don't have this push of insulin out into their system. And insulin obviously is parasympathetic. It will put you into rest and digest. All of a sudden, they don't have as much of that. They're going to be more awake. They've got more energy. Because they aren't being pushed down into this insulin phase. Insulin is designed for rest. Insulin is not designed for action. And so we're constantly pushing more and more insulin through these systems, which then makes them more tired. It's then they've also got stress in their life, which is making them more tired. So we alleviate that by pulling some of the protein out, or a lot of it in some cases, replacing it with plant matter. And what we see is that the insulin levels reduce because the plants significantly improve insulin sensitivity. They make it much easier for glucose to get into the cell, which means that we're fixing the problem with plant matter. We know that vegetable intake and higher vegetable intake is very good for insulin sensitivity at the cell. We know it also reduces insulin production as well. And we also see better quality of sleep. We see the metabolism actually increase in speed because there's not this same parasympathetic rest and digest influence that's happening all of the time. And this happens for a short period of time, 6 to 7 weeks. But then hopefully we're starting to then increase activity, increase exercise, and we can start running the metabolism as it normally does. But during this period, when there's a lot of stress and there's too much protein and there's too much insulin, it's essentially signaling to the body how you should rest and recover. And we actually need this body to get up and start moving and activating their energy. And so going a different way with the plant-based meals we've found has been far more effective for this population. I know there was a lot of science in there, but essentially, to make it really simple, if I was to make it super friendly, protein pushes insulin out, which tells the body to rest and calm down, essentially, and recover, which is the opposite of having lots of energy. That's one thing, is that we're overworking the pancreas. The pancreas is being asked to work too much to produce too much insulin. That's a problem down the track. Second, the stress and cortisol response that's creating insulin resistance. And this is where saturated fat comes into this as well, because it creates insulin resistance at the cell. That's the problem. So we need to treat the problem rather than just trying to bash our way down into the door of the muscle with more and more insulin. We actually want to make the muscle much more receptive of insulin in the first place. And that's where the plant foods have shown their absolute, there's very strong evidence for high plant-based foods and high plant-based diets being very effective for improving insulin sensitivity very quickly.
Which you would think, the way the medical people say, cut all of that out, it's complete opposite. And even some of the practitioners I've worked with, they say it's totally different than what I would have recommended or what I'm taught even in a functional.
Yeah. It's because the research that we're looking at is all long-term. And if you keep someone off protein for 2 years, then that's no good. And you're going to see real deficits. However, and this is where you'll get protein deficiencies. Whereas if you have a short period of time, and we can see within a period of 6 to 12 weeks, you can lose a significant amount of fat out of your liver, a significant amount of fat out of the head of your pancreas, all of these places that make your body work better if you lose fat out of. This is ectopic fat, organ fat. You can change that in a matter of 6 to 12 weeks very confidently. And it's often the dysfunction, that fat in those organs, that's a huge problem with the organ itself. And you can resolve a lot of those issues very quickly, but it's only temporary. You don't need to do it forever. You only need to restrict for a period of time. And this is where everyone was very against fasting, because you can't fast forever. You're not meant to fast forever. You're meant to fast for a very discrete period of time with a period of rest at the same time as well, so that you're not overstressing yourself. It's a coordinated effort. And so it's about the right thing at the right time for the right person in the right way, and then remeasuring and then changing the intervention as you progress.
And you were also talking about the saturated fat as in the cellular, how it affects cellular. Can you explain that, what that does?
So there's essentially lipidomes in a cell. So just imagine every single cell, you have a guard wall that surrounds the cell. So you've got all of your little energy centers and your nucleus and all of the various organelles that sit inside the cell. Outside the edge of the cell, it's like a spherical type object, but a little bit oddly shaped, is a layer of lipids or a layer of fats. And this is what some of my research was on, actually, was omega-3s and how these all work together. So what we know is that if you have a higher number of the fats in your guard wall around the cell that are saturated fat, it can reduce the insulin sensitivity of the cell. Whereas if you have more monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats in that cell wall, which come through your diet, your cells literally are what you eat. And those like fish and nuts and all of the good things, the oils, generally oils, but yes, olive oil is a good example. You'll see more poly and monounsaturated fats, and then that changes structure and function of the cell. It changes the configuration of the signaling pathways, and that changes insulin resistance at the cell, which is what we're trying to fix. We're trying to fix how well the cell gets sugar into the cell. If we fix that problem, most of our problems with diabetes are solved. But we're often telling a person's body to just produce more insulin, which is the way I like to think about it is essentially you've got insulin's like a bricklayer. It's going to go around and it's going to take the bricks and it's going to put it into the cell. If you could run your body with less bricklayers, it's going to cost you less money in labor, essentially. Mm-hmm. So you'd want less bricklayers. You just want the bricks to find themselves there. And you'd want the wall to be like a magnet, so that as soon as the brick comes by the wall, the muscle, it just goes, I'll take that, and it sucks it up. That's what we want for the body. That's why movement is such an important part of it. But as soon as you get stressed, you produce more cortisol, which makes it then harder to get sugar into the cell as well. So stress is a huge part of this. So you can do the best diet in the world, but be in the worst relationship, in the worst physical environment, and it's not giving you the results that you want because there's so much stress, which then prevents fully expressing the benefits of that diet as well. So it's got to be multifactorial.
Yep. I say stress kills. It does.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize how much, because I hear it all the time. I'm so stressed. Okay, what are you doing to recover from it? Before I talk about recovery of it, meaning sleep being one of the biggest parts of recovery, and people are getting shit sleep. Let's talk about, on the flip side, the more ectomorph body. And because people think it's always the people that are overweight have all the biggest issues. Guess what, people? I have several sensors I've been working with, and this is your true ectomorph. And these are your hard gainers. They can't seem to gain the weight. They don't hold the muscle mass. And people look at these people and say, you're skinny. What problems do you have? You have no problems. You can wear any clothing. You don't have any issues. And every single one that I work with has the worst gut issues, like some of them debilitating. And I've seen them where they tell me they're following the expert instructions saying intermittent fast. And they're trying to and they know they need more protein. This is one, and we'll talk about this too, that this is a body that actually needs more protein. But they're trying to pack it in with a very inefficient digestive system into 2 times a day. And I had someone tell me yesterday, can't make this up,
that she's eating 2 times a day, sometimes 3. And how much? She said, I eat a lot of protein. I said, how much are you getting in? Up to 160 grams in just a couple. And she's, my gut's a mess. Surprise, not.
Yeah.
So everybody thinks, and I'm going to have my next client that's coming on to the podcast is going to be one of these sensors. And she said, I don't think anybody would want to hear my story. There's a lot of people out there like this, but everybody blows them off because they shouldn't have any issues because they're thin. Yeah. So if you want to speak to this and why this body requires more of that protein and more of these smaller, more frequent meals, which everybody says, don't be eating all the time. And what a difference it makes to this body when we get them doing the right things at the right time here. It's phenomenal, the difference that they feel.
Totally. And this is what's so interesting about precision is it's not even about the protein in some instances. It's how it's cooked. It's how you're digesting it. It's when you eat it, in what frequency, all of those types of things. So what we know about the sensor. So if we were to think about a sensor in your mind, think of a long, skinny ballet dancer, essentially a very finely boned high jumper, an ultra marathon walker. It's these individuals that are very slender. They've got very skinny bones. They don't have the same constitution, to use an old term, as an individual who's going to be in the shot put. I know the Olympics is coming up at the time of this recording, so this is all very relevant. So we've got two very different bodies, and of course they're going to work differently. What we know about the shot putter is when they go into stress, they gain mass. Their whole metabolism looks to reduce energy output, reduce energy availability. So they feel tired and they gain weight. Whereas another individual, when the sense of this very delicate individual, when they go into stress, they actually go into a hypercortical activity. This is their brain becomes more active. And when their brain becomes more active, they need carbohydrates to fuel their brain. And what they do to prepare to get ready for those carbohydrate requirements is they start sending stress signals out into the body through hormones and nervous system. And what they do is they start breaking down their muscle so that their muscle can be taken to the liver, and you can start creating more glucose, because you can make glucose, sugar, out of proteins. So you break your muscle down, you turn it into sugar, and you send those sugars to the brain, which is buzzing at 1,000,000 miles an hour as they're working through their stress. So what does this mean? We also see a higher parathyroid function in these individuals too, which means they're going to start leaching more calcium from their bones, because calcium helps you produce energy. It's part of the energy pathway. And it says, if I've got enough calcium and I've got carbs, happy days. Like I can get right into this. So considering those things, we've got a body that when it goes through stress, it will lose weight. And my mum is one of these individuals. If she goes through stress, she will lose 2 to 3 kilos, and she already only weighs 50 kilos, 110 pounds, whatever it might be. She's very light. And she doesn't have weight to lose, but in stress, she loses weight. And this is because in stress, her cortical activity goes up. Whereas in stress, the bigger person, their insulin production increases, and that helps them gain more mass. Their thyroid activity comes down. And you'll see this in research. There was a great paper in 2006 in Nature, actually, looking at if you take individuals who are a BMI of over 27, so a higher mass individual, versus an individual with a BMI of 22 or less at the starting point, and then you both put them into work that is stressful and they don't feel like they're in control of their work, the big person gains weight, the small person loses weight. Same stress, different response. And so now let's look at this environment. We have a body that loses weight in stress. So of course, if we can see that stress is compounding with this body, we're going to have to be putting preventative measures in place to make sure that they don't lose mass. Because if they lose muscle and if they lose bone, this relates to falls. And if you break your hip, particularly when you're older, it's a 50% mortality after 12 months. It is a death sentence for half people. It's insane. So this is what we've got to be thinking about. So with this individual now, we're going to need to put protein into their body to tell them, hey, yes, your brain's going 1,000,000 miles an hour, but I need you to rest, and I need you to digest, and I need you to slow down, and I need you to build so that we can maintain mass and we don't keep losing it. It's the opposite of the first person. They gain too much. We're trying to reduce the gain. this person lose too much, so we're trying to reduce the loss. But then we've got a couple of other considerations as well. Firstly, they've got a smaller body, so they're not going to need as much protein as most people. Like 50 kilos or 110 pounds, you're going to need around about, to maximize muscle growth and things like this in this person, you might be looking at 75 to 80 grams of protein if it's delivered in the right way. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting as well about the protein literature here is that if you give a dose of protein, you only need to give about 20 grams of protein with about 2 grams of leucine. And that will maximize muscle protein growth for the next 3 to 4 hours. And if you have more than that, you actually only get a tiny little bit more muscle growth. Once you get to maximum muscle growth speed at about 20 grams of protein, you get enough for the next 3 to 4 hours. So what we know about this body is a few things. We know that they've got a digestive function that is lower in acid. So their hydrochloric acid production isn't as great, and you need hydrochloric acid to process protein. You need it to chew it up, to break it down, and to make it ready. And if you don't have enough acid, or if you have too much protein, it will get into the bowel, it will ferment, and it causes headaches in this kind of individual. And it also really slows down and makes their digestion very sluggish. This is where we can see either diarrhea or constipation, depending on the person. So
some both.
Sometimes both. Exactly.
Oof.
Yes, that's right. So so the considerations for this person are, it's not just going to be protein. It's going to be when we consume it, how much they consume because of their acid production, but also we've got to be pairing this with carbohydrates as well. It's just protein by itself. We've actually got to have more protein here, and more carbohydrates, I should say, more carbohydrates, because it's the key fuel source. Once you've got a certain amount of protein, you can't get much more muscle growth out of that protein. But if you add carbohydrates in and some fats, these people need calories generally, but the carbohydrates for their brain activity, we're going to see a much greater ability for this body to grow, because carbohydrates produce insulin, creates rest and recovery and growth, which is exactly what this body needs. Again, when we're thinking about protein intake for this person, we need to be thinking, and my mum went through this it's only at the top of my mind because I was using all of these principles. Just my mum had a virus. She probably dropped 3 kilos in a very short period of time. And I said, Mum, you have to eat regularly. You have to eat every 3 to 4 hours, and you've got to I want you to have 20 grams of protein. What is that in meat? It's around about 75 to 80 grams, or maybe 2.5 ounces of meat. It's actually not too much meat, or maybe, I'm not very good at the conversions. It could be like high 2 ounces of meat. So like less than a deck of cards, essentially. Mm-hmm. So that's the amount of meat that you need, but you want it slow cooked. Because if it's slow cooked or minced, it's going to go into the digestive system and the acid that's available is going to be able to break it down more easily, because a science term, there's more surface area to volume ratio. There's more access points for the acid to get at the meat if it's already broken down as a slow cook, versus if it's a big bit of steak, you can only attack the outside, but mince, you can attack all around the little bits. And so that makes the acid much more effective. It breaks the meat down a whole lot faster. They don't have the digestive issues. They get the protein into their body and they stimulate growth. And then you wait a few hours and then you do the same thing again. And then you wait a few hours and you do the same thing again. So what we want to do with this person when they're just generally is we want to be giving them essentially a whole day of muscle growth. And so having 2 meals, not only are you going to overload the digestive system and have a whole lot of problems with your digestion as a result, but also you're only going to get 3 to 4 hours out of that. You're only going to get 2 meals worth, whereas otherwise you could have 4 meals worth of protein growth and development, particularly if they're coming with carbohydrates too. So this is where we've got 2 very different beasts. One is every bit of protein you give me, I'm going to grow more with. Thank you so much. I'm going to grow as much as I can. We've got another individual that they need the protein to stop the activity. We actually want their body to say, hey, rest and recover, produce insulin so that you can calm down, so that you can hold this mass, or at least replace what's coming in. And that's very important. But what's so fascinating about these individuals, when your brain's very active in stress, it can make you nauseous, or it can make you not as hungry, because all of your activity and your nervous system is geared towards your brain activity. And you actually have to turn your brain off so that your digestive system can be activated through the parasympathetic nervous system, and the vagus nerve can be activated. That then allows you to digest more effectively. So for this individual, if I'm talking to them, I'm saying, okay, I want liquid form proteins if possible, or I want liquefied meats, or I want minced meats, or I want slow cooks, and I want them regularly dotted throughout the day. I want you to calm yourself down before the meal and do some deep breathing. I want to make sure that you're having an appropriate amount. 4 serves of 20 throughout the day is better than 2 serves of 40 grams of protein, as if we're looking for that 80 mark, because we're going to get greater longevity out of each protein serve. Looking at smaller regular meals with carbohydrates included, what that's going to do is it's going to make the digestion work a whole lot better. It's going to make sure that the body is protected and we're holding the muscle tissue where it needs to be held, and we're still providing the energy that the brain needs to do its activity. So very different physiologies. One person's at risk of weight loss and demineralization, catabolism, breakdown. The other person is at risk of hyperanabolism, too much growth. So these are the very different elements of what it is to be human. And to look at 2 people and say you just need high protein diets is insane.
Because most of your guardians, even though they look like shot putters, most of them are not Olympic shot putters that they're putting in all that training and stuff. They're usually not.
And what I've found with elite athletes is that even guardian athletes just don't need as much protein, and they don't need as much carb. Like the way that their energy systems work, and this is another factor in it as well, is the guardian's energy system is designed for a 10-second sprint or a 3-hour walk. They are not designed for a 3-minute sprint. And so those energy systems are very different. The 8-second, 10-second sprint doesn't really use any fuel from outside the muscle. It actually just uses the very, very fast kindling that it has in the muscle to burn that fire straight away. And it doesn't really cost any energy. Like it costs very little, except for the nervous system that is required to really make everything flow, or a very long walk. That's what their energy systems are built for. So they don't need the same amount of carbohydrates, because the carbohydrates are really made for the 3-minute to 3-hour sprint, like a marathoner. But when you're walking very steadily, or gardening, or doing things at a steady pace, you're burning fat tissue, not so much carbohydrates. So even elite athletes, if they're exercising the right way, they're doing short, sharp, powerful stuff, or long-term endurance stuff, need a lot less carbohydrates generally. They need less protein generally, because they've got more factors like insulin and growth hormone, the IGF-1, that are actually producing more stimulus for growth anyway. I've had individuals that have had 0.5 grams per kilogram body weight. Normally they say the minimum amount is 0.8. I've had him on 0.5 grams per kilogram body weight. He was lifting heavy weights. That stimulated a whole lot of activity, hormonal activity that supports muscle growth. He gained 2 kilos of muscle in a couple of months while losing fat tissue on very little protein. This is, and obviously that's an N equals 1, but the principles are there as well. These bodies naturally grow, whereas the other bodies naturally waste. And we've got to prevent that waste and prevent the overgrowth. Yeah. The leaner individual, much more, they like to go at a faster pace in endurance. You'll see all of the marathon runners have this delicate little bone structure, and that's a high carbohydrate output. So they need carbohydrates, and they need more protein. When they're becoming elite athletes, they need another 50% protein again, because they're actually burning protein as a fuel, because that's what their body does, or that's what a lot of bodies do when they're doing a lot of exercise. So it's different again. Yeah.
So a couple of things that I notice in my practice. Number one is my guardians, connectors towards the guardian, and the diplos that are up on the cusp of guardian also have reported back that I didn't realize how much food I don't need. Right? Especially at dinner. They're feeling so much better lightening up the dinner. We as Americans here, and I don't know about you Aussies, how your dinners are, but we've always been like, pack in the breakfast, have a light lunch, and then dinner is the big dinner, right? You pack it all in, and then you go to bed. And
most people aren't eating a very healthy type of diet. And we're going to sleep on this, which again, we're still going to touch on sleep. But they say, when we tell these people, lighten up at night, have your big meal at lunch, they're like, God, I feel so much better. I didn't realize just how much I don't need. And then
Yeah.
on the converse, with your more the sensors and even some of the crusaders, when I see them and they tell me they're doing like a keto type, a very low carb, I cringe because it's like, and how do you feel? I'm tired, I'm off, something's not right. Exactly. And giving them these carbohydrates that they've been afraid of and getting them eating them more often and adding in some more good quality proteins and just constant loading up on just fats. They're also saying, I just can't believe how much better I feel. But I will tell you, especially the sensor, the Diplo's down towards sensor, when I say, I want you eating carbohydrates, you actually need to, the majority of them say, thank you, because I feel better when I do, but everybody's telling me not to.
That's right. Because
and
we have a very obese focused health lens right now. We're not thinking about what lean people need. We just think they're healthy. And it skews everyone's advice. Absolutely.
Yep, exactly. Just like when I met you. And you're like, when are you eating breakfast? Well, I don't until 12 or 1 after CrossFit. You're like, good God. No wonder you're tired. I'm like, I'm good with twice a day. No, you're not. And other than packing on some estrogen weight when I'm doing an estrogen patch, not realizing that I genetically don't metabolize estrogen well. So I become estrogen dominant within a couple of weeks just on a patch. I have been at the same weight within about 2 pounds since I started with PH 360, almost 4 years. That's huge to get to there where since a child, I had been all over the place because I started with you as a 150 activator. That is the line dividing the connector activator. And we even had to go into more connectory things to bring in than just the activator. So again, that's even deeper precision than what even we started with. And people say, well, why? I could just go get a profile or something. When you add in the human component of someone understanding you to bring that into how to work with this thing, that's also where the gold is. So I want to make sure that people understand that the PH coaches, how valuable we are in bringing this platform to our clients. To help understand it, because you can look at it, but there's so much information in there, and how do you utilize it? Because out of 6 different priorities, they're different in order for each of the health types. Because what does everybody focus on? Food and fitness. And that's only for mine, for the activator, where that's number 1 and 2, movement, and then food to fuel it. And I have had hour-long sessions with people about we call it genius, but about their work. I've had hour-long sessions with people about their family, about the makeup of their home, where things are placed. And people just don't realize, like you said, how much this environment affects everything. And you had said, and I remember this back from a training you did, it was when you match the environment to the person. We're usually trying to match the person to the environment. But when you match the environment to the person, that's where we see the gold.
Right. As long as you've got to make everybody's body, it's just waiting for the environment to activate it. So if you put the right environment about the body, it activates the right way. And food is just one of those environments. But people forget, you're in a bad relationship, it is the environment that completely changes your physiology. Like, you can be eating good food and it can make you want to eat bad food. It can then, you just are demotivated. There's stress going through your system the whole time. Like, it is a total nightmare to be in the wrong relationship. And it completely messes with the food and the exercise that you're doing. This is because it's all part of the environment too. Even you go to somewhere that's very cold versus very hot, your metabolism works so differently. The environment is the diet, which is just a daily habit. A daily diet just means daily. The diet of your heat, the temperature that you have in your body, informs how your body is going to respond. Food and exercise are just 2 very tangible things we can control. We don't think we're in control of our climate. We don't think we're in control of our relationships as much. we just have to put up with them. Whereas food and exercise is something that's more in our individual control all the time.
And when we talk about the environment, I thought I had messaged you a couple of weeks ago about the altitude, that I live in altitude. My profile said to me, and it made so much sense, that I should limit my time or eliminate my time in high altitude. I've been in it 28 years now. And when I go up higher, I got altitude sickness a couple of weeks ago, and then I slept in it last week. And again, I'm awake. I'm going, this is ridiculous. I just have a major trouble sleeping 10,000 feet. It just wrecks me, but I can come back. I can go hike at 12,000 feet, which I did last week, came home, and I'm at about 50, almost a mile high here. And I slept great. My recovery was great.
Yeah.
But I go up there and you can forget about it. So I have to really, the last thing I want to do. So I up the carbs. That's where I was going. So in my profile, it said up the carbohydrates. I worked with the bean minerals. I was spraying those. That helped. And then I up my carbohydrate intake, and the recovery tends to be better. But it's so interesting. I also will get very bloated. And I go, why? I just did this hike, 2,000 feet of elevation gain, major output, 7.5 miles. I should come back and feel lean AF the next day. And I'm bloated.
Yeah.
I bloat for a good day or two. Like just sometimes where my pants are tight. And it's usually going to be like on a Friday or Saturday. Monday comes around, my abs are back. And I know the altitude can also cause bloating. And it's just so crazy how, like you said, how just little things in the environment affect us. And then when you spoke on relationship, I just had a conversation with someone yesterday, a client who said, and I know there's issues with the relationship, and this client said, I'm not motivated. And she had taken a trip where she was away and then came back into it again. And I said, and look at where you felt better.
Yeah. And
as a diplomat, the place, number one. So it all just makes sense. And I can relate like everything you say to a different client that experiences this, and what we see when we match the environment. People are so used to matching themselves to everything around them. But when they live authentically and match everything else to them, game change.
Yeah, totally.
Let's talk sleep, stress go together. Stress kills people. Stress is lethal. And we're just used to this. When you hear people say, I'm so busy, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. It's like a badge of honor to be so freaking busy, but yet it's literally killing. I read, this was a couple of years ago, up to 75% of doctor visits are for stress-related illness. This is all things that we can control. And sleep is one of the areas where we get the most recovery. And that's where I hear summertime, especially. Well, I'm up later because it's light longer. So that throws off everything. And like you said, light is a time giver. So I'll have you touch on that. And then I have my people that are shift workers. They're all over the place with sleep. And when you're not getting that recovery, it really throws the body into even more distress. But so I'll have you touch on some of that.
Just stress and sleep. Let's do it. Okay, cool. So I know that I don't know how much time we've got, so I'll be brief. I'll be more efficient on this than I have been the other stuff. So
all right.
The first and foremost, stress is life. Stress is part of our life. In fact, the only person who is not experiencing stress is already dead. This is a very important thing to know, is that life is indicated by the fact that you can stress. If you can't stress, you're on the way out. So the very important factor about this is that we live a life, all of our cognitive, social, psychosocial focus is on what have I got to do, who have I got to be? And so all of it is on all of the things that I have to do. Any kind of doing is going to be a stress. And our body is designed to stress throughout the day. And then it's designed to recover overnight. And it's designed to recover at various times throughout the day as well. But the whole point of stress is that it says, what am I going to learn about today so that I can recover and consolidate that learning overnight? That's why we stress. Whenever we go for a run, our attention increases. Whenever we jump into a cold water bath, our brain is alight for the next 4 hours because it's saying, what the hell just happened? I really need to pay attention here. It's not like this magical cure for things. It just creates a stress response within your system. And so the idea of that is that as soon as you become stressed, you've got to turn on your video camera and you've got to start paying attention, because obviously the only reason we would stress is for a matter of our survival. That's what our system is built for. So we start remembering things, or we start taking things in. Then when we recover, when we meditate, when we breathe, when we sleep, we consolidate those learnings and we say, oh, I would learn about that and do it better the next time. So when you stress your muscles in the exercise, you're actually weaker at the end of your workout. You're weaker. Your muscle tissue is damaged. Your muscle is out of energy. If you try and do the same workout back to back, you'll perform much worse the second time if you try and do them one after the other. What you need is sleep for 2 nights that allows an appropriate amount of learning and recovery for your muscles. Then your muscles are now not only have learned, but are stronger because they've had the ability to grow, because growing happens in sleep, not during the day. We break down our body through the day. We build it up at night. We're then stronger day 3 than we were day 1 because our body learned and it had time to grow. This is the problem with us right now, is that we do all day and then we sacrifice our sleep, or we have poor quality of sleep, or we do things before our sleep that reduce the quality of it, whatever it might be, with TV, or not necessarily TV, blue lights, caffeine.
The biggest offender.
Yep, you bet. Scrolling away, absolutely.
Facebook rabbit holes.
Exactly. So we're happy to sacrifice this sleep because we think, oh, we've just got to do more stuff because we've got this brain that is motivated to do things because it thinks that's important for survival. So as soon as we start disrupting our sleep, we now no longer recover. And if anyone's done a really big workout and then not slept the next day, your muscle soreness is the worst it has ever been. And that's because you actually didn't get to recover that night. The only place that your brain gets smarter and bigger and your muscles get stronger and your heart learns to pump harder and your nervous system repairs itself is while you are asleep. And so it's a very simple equation. If you don't sleep, it creates, firstly, you don't get recovery. So your body has to produce even more stress hormone the next day to keep yourself awake. That's first. But you don't recover from any of that stress. So you're just continually in a breakdown mode. Now, different people will respond differently to that stress. Some individuals, the guardians, the diplomats, connectors, after 4 nights of shift work sleep or disturbed sleep or disrupted sleep rhythms, the body says, oh, I'm stressed. So I'm going to protect myself. And guardians, diplomats, connectors protect themselves through weight gain. And so they will then go into insulin resistance and they'll start showing signs of diabetes after 4 days. But then if they have 4 days of normal sleep, their insulin resistance improves. So this is the thing. It's if you get sleep, your body recovers and normalizes. If you don't, it goes into some sort of condition. If you take an individual, the leaner individual that we were talking about, the sensor, and we get them to go without sleep, they don't get the neural repair. Their brain doesn't get to repair as much, and they don't get muscle repair. They will start to shed weight very quickly, and they'll become very weak. They'll become very weak mentally as well, very fatigued. And this is because the tissues, and thinking, just remember the guardians and some of the diplomats connectors, they are naturally good at growing anyway. They're naturally good at growing mass. Whereas the sensors, if they don't get their chance to grow and relax, they've got no chance. Essentially, they will strip their weight down very quickly and get very unhealthy, very weak, and then have a lot less tolerance for the day. They'll be in incredible fatigue, essentially. They just won't last as long before they'll collapse, because they don't have the same type of reserve. So what I want to say about this, sorry, you go.
And what about like an activator or crusader? Because I
know
activators, yeah. You as a crusader, you guys, the team, have done the classes for the US where you're up all night teaching.
Yeah.
For 2 days in a row. And I'm going, how the hell? Because I have to bow out. When I went through, I was late at night, and by 10 o'clock, I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But you guys tend to recover better. How is like an activator and a crusader
as far as the stress?
We just never let you know about the recovery. It's all for show. So yeah, generally Crusaders have got this very heavy dopamine drive in their brain, which means that dopamine helps you overcome pain, helps you overcome discomfort, but it's incredibly costly on your brain tissue. So if you're in dopamine all day long, your brain will be very tired. And so Crusaders have a greater ability to produce more dopamine and do more dopamine related activities for longer because their brain is set up for that. So that allows them to get through the couple of days of non-stop presenting overnight. However, the next 3 to 4 days, there's definitely a cognitive deficit that happens over the next 3 to 4 days. I'm just not as sharp. I need to catch up my sleep. And we're incredibly disciplined with, I'm going to get 10 hours tonight. And I'm going to, when I wake up, I'm going to make sure I've got the right lighting in my eyes. I'm going to have a break at this period of time so I can rest during when my normal deep sleep would be. Like, there's a whole lot of strategies that we put in place so that we are less affected by the circadian disruption, but it still is very disruptive. So Crusaders are more dopamine and a little bit inflammatory and oxidative stress, but not quite as much as activators. Activators don't drive from dopamine, they drive from adrenaline. And then they're very inflammatory. And so any stress that comes will happen much harder, much faster. And the body has a certain capacity to how much it can tolerate before it'll want to reduce. What I mean by that is you've got a dopamine is designed for a marathon, adrenaline is designed for a sprint. And so you'll see an activator sprint and inflame, and then they'll have to recover. They just won't have the same capacity to keep pushing. Crusaders have slightly less inflammation and a dopamine that's more forward-thinking drive as opposed to adrenaline. And so it's got a different profile. It's not as fast, but it's more consistent, whereas adrenaline is up and down. Yeah, that's the explanation for those two.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I've noticed I can get through with, if I have a night where it's poor sleep, I can get through the next day and I'm going, wow, I don't feel too badly. It's the following day. Where's the truck that ran me over? Is when it really hits, because I've pushed myself too much that one day to where I didn't sleep. Say I was out, went to a concert or something, and I don't get to sleep till 12 or 1 a.m., which wrecks me.
Yeah.
But yet I can get up the next day and kind of power through just on that power. Like you said, just that sprint.
Yeah.
And then the crash hits.
That's right.
And you don't even sleep as well that night.
That's right. Yeah. And so the key for an activator with a poor night's sleep is to have a nap just after lunch. And the way to think about it, it's 2 6-hour days. It's like you have a 6-hour day, you have lunch, and then you get tired, you have a little nap, and you wake up with a belly that's metabolized the food. You've had an adrenal break, and you should be able to hit that next 6 hours pretty well. And that should also help you sleep that night too.
I have a activator client, and she has a new baby that they adopted. And the baby likes to be up a lot. So when I would meet with her, sleep would be off. And she was also a practitioner. And she was booking clients like back to back every 15 minutes, chiropractor in the afternoons. And getting her to take breaks within every couple of hours to just stop. Even on the days, she said, that total game change, because she'd have lack of sleep. And even on a good night, just that constant go on all adrenaline. And then she'd crash by the time the night came down. She couldn't even think straight.
Yeah.
So just that I tell my activators, play hard, work hard, rest hard, which is the hardest thing to do, but it makes that big difference. And the Crusaders, the ones that typically, like you said, if they get it, they'll have the right plan in place. The ones that don't get it are drinking the pots of coffee.
Yeah.
Which makes things worse because it's pretty
Exactly.
toxic.
Yep.
And they don't realize how much they don't need it.
Exactly. Yep.
So, yeah, I love it. Sleep is just absolutely crucial. And like you said, it's the one thing that people tend to give up the easiest. They'll give that up. They'll give that up before they'll give up booze.
Yeah. But our whole society is built around how much work can I do? How much money can I make? Can I be on? Can I be aware? And then our brain's stimulated by these really easy dopamine tools of the scrolling of death that we all have. So it's like the whole environment socially and technologically is set up to keep our attention on all of the time. Yeah. And we don't consider that stress is only good if you recover. If you don't recover, stress is death. That's essentially, and the way to think about this, there's a great Matt Walker, I believe that's his name. He's like the sleep expert of the world. He's amazing. Great stuff he's done everywhere. He talks about the quickest way to die is to starve yourself of oxygen. The second quickest way to die of starvation is starvation of sleep. So as far as things that your body needs in order of power, oxygen and sleep. And then all of the other stuff that you think is your basic essential needs comes after that. So the sleep is, if you don't get it, you essentially don't recover, which means your body's on a constant downward spiral of breakdown. Yeah.
And what is it? I think it's after the loss of 2 hours of sleep is the equivalent the next day of having had 2 alcoholic drinks.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I mean,
and driving drunk. Yeah.
And driving drunk. Yeah. You're pretty much impaired.
Your reflexes slow down. Yeah.
I was up, it was a couple of weeks ago. I woke up, just one of those trying to solve world problems. I had things on my mind, woke up at 3 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep because everything starts going through. And so I just went up to work the rest of my day. And I remember, like, literally it was when I didn't get sleep in the mountains, and I woke up and I was so out of it from having lost so much sleep that night. I couldn't get to sleep till 4 a.m. That's what it was. Wow. Couldn't get to sleep till 4 a.m. in the mountain. Like, I was so out of it. I woke up and I was walking into the walls. I don't even drink. I haven't drank since I found out I was an ApoE4 in 2019. So almost 5 years, over 5 years that I haven't drank. And I walked and I said, this is what it felt like to be loaded. It made so much sense. I had lost so much sleep that night that I was literally, I was freaking impaired.
Yeah.
Totally impaired. And there's people that walk around like that every day and don't even realize it because they get so used to living. Here's your stress threshold, and they're living up here.
Yeah.
We actually need to be right below it. It keeps us, we can harness stress, right?
Yeah. Stress is
motivation.
Absolutely essential.
Absolutely.
Stress is the thing, like all of your best experiences will be when you've been experiencing stress. Laughter, fun, activity, all of them are a stressful activity. Yep. Some of you might have your best experiences when you sleep, maybe your dreams are, but generally anything that's happening during the day is a stress response, and you have to repair that. This is why stress is so critical. And there's a beautiful process called supercompensation. And that is, if you stress just enough in exercise, you'll go through a period of fatigue and then you'll come back stronger than when you started. If you overstress, you will become much more fatigued. It takes you a lot longer to recover and you get back to baseline. If you understress, then your body doesn't improve at all. So there's a Goldilocks effect where you actually need to be under some sort of challenge. That then stimulates your body saying, oh, this environment requires more of me, so I'm going to get stronger. But if you're sitting on the couch all day, your body goes, oh, my body requires more of me being able to sit. Oh, what are the things that I don't need? Oh, muscle, bone, a whole lot of different things. I don't need my brain because I'm just watching telly. So your body will say, okay, cool. I'm just going to learn from today's experience. And today's experience said that I don't need muscles and bones and brains. So I'm not going to prioritize them in my recovery. But if you're using those things in the right way, then your body will recover them because it sees that there's a need for them. You've got to teach your body with the environment what it needs. But if you can, this is where precision health is so important, that if you're constantly teaching it the wrong way, like constantly waking up at the wrong time and trying to exercise first thing in the morning, and that creates so much more stress on your body because it's the wrong time, that your body just gets back to recovery. But if you then exercise at the right time, the same exercise creates the right amount of stress. Yeah.
I love it when a client says to me, I don't have any stress. Us talking is a stress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just us having this conversation is stress. You're not going to get rid of it. And then you have like your COMT genes, right? Breaks down your catechol, your stress neurotransmitters. Yeah. And the COMT, everybody talks about the AA. I'm an AA. That's a very slow breakdown. So you wonder why I'm like this. A lot of the time, it's not just the activator. It's a combination of the two that I'm just high strung here. But you have the opposite the GG. And it's a very rapid breakdown of these neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
And they actually have lower cognitive function in a non-stressful environment because there's not enough stimulation because they don't
you're
have
breaking down so much faster.
Natural neurotransmitters there. So I say you actually need some. And I've had to coach people that like, we need to add some more stress to your life. And people tend to think of stress as these big events. That's why they say, I don't have any stress, like events with the job or family, like you said, just these big things that happen, but it's not. And we have eustress, which is good stress. That could be getting married. It's just like all the good things that bring you joy, like you said, laughter. And then you have the distress. And it's every bit of it, like you said, every day, it's part of our lives. And we're not going to stop stress. We just have to amp up the recovery.
Yes.
And we all just have individual needs and where that is. So again, precision health for the win. The resounding theme that I hear is, Susan, I'm doing all the things and nothing is changing, or I'm getting worse. I'm doing, quote, all the things. Are you doing all the things that your body needs? Are you doing all the things, maybe you're doing all the right things at the wrong times? In chronobiology, we could have a whole other discussion on that, how that throws things off or can make things better when you do the right things at the right time. And this is just where all this comes in. And so I just want to get the word out there that, guys, you don't have to do programs that are all, again, a program that says this is right for everybody. You're going to have about up to 40% of people are not going to respond. When you have a specific, like any type of a program, whether it's food-based, exercise-based, 15 to 40%.
15 to, so that's just exercise. So what we see in the literature is that if you take 100 people and make them do exercise for 3 months to 6 months, you will see that 15% of those individuals doing aerobic training will not get any fitter. In fact, they get less fit over that period of time because their genetics are not designed for that type of exercise, or they're not as responsive to that. It's not the right environment for that person. The second thing is there's been the original study in that work looking at glucose control was 40% of the individuals didn't actually improve from 6 months of exercise. But you can have some medications that are 75% ineffective, but 25% of people, they work very well. But if you then genetically target them, they become 90% effective. So this is where everything has to be personalized. You have to be doing something that is right for you. And sometimes it's not even the what, it's the how, it's the when, it's when you're training, it's how you're cooking that food, it's the where, the environment that you're in. Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it the who, the people that you're hanging around with, or that you're feeling isolated or lonely? It could be related to the passion that you have around it. You can be really stressed about doing something that you hate, and that changes your profile while you're doing it. So it's got to be about you. It's got to be the thing that suits you. And this is why it's so wonderful talking to you, Susan, because you just are doing this work so beautifully, is that you're helping people find that answer and then move forward in a great way.
I woke up, I think it was yesterday. Can't remember if it was yesterday or today. And somebody had messaged me. All right, no, it was a session I had yesterday, 2 of them back to back, just such amazing changes. And I remember texting somebody, said, how's your day going? And I said, to have your day start out knowing that you've made a difference in people's lives like this, just by helping them be them, understand them, it's just priceless. It's just priceless. And that's why I do what I do, because it keeps my heart full. And this is, I try to say I don't have any of the creepy crusader, but I have to have my purpose, and this is my purpose. And that's why I do this podcast, to bring this information out there, that you don't have to be out there floating around trying to find your way, that we can dial in that way pretty darn quickly and get you on track. And so come and talk to me.
Yeah.
This is all in the show notes of how to contact me. And also I want to throw it out there too, because I have a lot of, I see the followers, and I know there's other coaches or they might be practitioners, trainers, especially. I hear trainers, this person's just fat and lazy. No, you're giving them the wrong shit to do at the wrong time and wondering why they're not making a difference here. Open your mind up, trainers. PH has courses where you can get trained to work with your people, take the guesswork out of it. So that's available too. You can always hit me up for that information, but be part of our family here in the US that we're trying to grow. But if you're looking to get results, come and talk to me, because we have a great family and a great support system at PH too. And it's all about just getting people the results that they damn well deserve after decades and decades of really just suffering through. I just don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah.
So it's available. So
awesome.
Thank you so much. And you're going to be back on again, because
we've got a session on chronobiology to talk about next, I think.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because that plays a part in longevity. And when I was doing the true diagnostics interpretations, the biological age testing, and I would talk to people about that. That's one thing that nobody talks about is chronobiology, but how much that affects our longevity. It's a key piece, and why I would have biohackers coming to me and working with me that are doing everything that the other podcasts, the expert podcasts that are going to the deep dives are saying, take all these supplements, fast, do all the fasting. And they're going, there's still a piece that's missing. And that's what I can provide specifically with even just chronobiology of doing what you're designed to do at the times you're designed to do it. So yeah, that'll be a whole other one, but I love and appreciate you so much. And you just made such a difference to me, and when the continued support, when I have questions with my clients, you're just my human, one of my very important humans. So thank you so much for gracing this podcast with your amazing knowledge again.
My honor. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So thank you everybody for listening. If you're interested in seeing if we are a fit to work together, all the information to contact me is in the show notes. My consults are free. Let's have a conversation about you. Now go out there and be your most authentic self. Thank you. Thank you for tuning into my podcast. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to share it with someone who'd find the information useful. Please leave a review anywhere you listen to podcasts, and it'll help the information get out to others. If you're interested in seeing if we're a great fit to work together, the link is in the show notes below, where you can sign up for a free consultation with me. So go make it a great day and let your authentic self shine.